Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm so honoured to be here today, and I wanted to say a few things about Mary's case, of course, but also something broader. Some of you might know that I've been dealing with the Israel lobby for a while, quite a while, over 20 years, and the Israel lobby is, on the one hand, belligerent, ideological, blind, bigoted, but also, I would argue, increasingly desperate. And let me explain what I mean by that. That there's no doubt they are powerful and they have access often to governments. I would say more the Liberal National Party than Labor, but Labor too. To aspects of the press, not all, but some more than others. And they can often get their way. However, and this is a very important however, public opinion, particularly in the last 2 odd years since October 7 and Israel's genocide in Gaza, has fundamentally shifted on the question of Palestine. And it's not just happening here in Australia. What do I mean by that? In every public opinion poll, there was a Pew poll that was taken globally in the last few months. Western Europe, the US, and here found that a majority of people were against what Israel is doing, are critical of Israel deeply, and do not want their governments to trade weapons or weapons parts with Israel, which is exactly what Australia is doing. So when one talks about the question of Australia, as our wonderfully dear Prime Minister says, we have shared values with Israel. He said again last week that Israel, I'm a deep friend of Israel. I'm quoting him. The question is, what is he a friend with? What exactly is the friendship based on? Now, does Antony Albanese, for example, love the fact that kids are being murdered in Gaza? I like to think the answer to that is no. However, and it's a very important however, the reason our government is supporting Israel is not just because of the Israel lobby. It's just not. They play an important part. I'm not denying that. The reason that many in the media, including at the ABC, blindly support a pro-Israel line is not simply because of the lobby. They play a part, but it's not that. It's much more than that. And there is, I think, an ideological affinity with what Israel has been doing long before October 7. I've spoken in the last 20 years to huge amounts of journalists and editors from across the board. Murdoch Press, ABC, Guardian, SBS. And in every single one of those outlets, there are, even with the Murdoch Press, there are some good people. Not many there, but some. Not very few there, maybe one, if that. But I mention that to say that there is often a separation between an editor's position and a journalist's point of view. And the case of Mary here is incredibly instructive because what Mary tweeted, I'm not going to rehash what was said because you guys are all here for that reason, you know, was so unbelievably pedestrian. And I don't say that as a criticism of Mary, I simply say it as a degree of a statement of fact. The idea that pro-Israel lobbyists are so offended and distressed and upset of a tweet, 2 tweets, which were simply stating an opinion about a speech by Hassan Nasrallah, the now deceased leader of Hezbollah, is absurd. This is not about those tweets. The case that Mary is fighting is clearly to defend her right to do so. I'm not denying that for a second. But what this is about is a far bigger challenge that the Israel lobby has. They are not winning the battle to win hearts and minds. It's pretty obvious based on what I just said. Public opinion is increasingly fundamentally against what Israel is doing. And this was happening already, by the way, before October 7, but the images that we are seeing day in, day out of children and women and men and all citizens of Gaza being shredded and killed and tortured in mass numbers. The death toll in Gaza now, no one knows. Likely to be at least 100,000 Palestinians killed in the space of less than 2 years. And people in this room might know this, but it's worth saying that Australia has a direct connection to that. Australia has been sending for years, but including in the last month, key weapons parts for an F-35 fighter jet that Israel uses every single day above Gaza. And when Antony Albanese and Penny Wong and others claim, as Penny Wong did this week in Parliament again, that we are sending so-called, her words, non-lethal parts, and the obvious question is, firstly, what is a non-lethal part for an F-35 fighter jet? Question one, a cup holder, thank you. I guess a cup holder could be non-lethal, yes, if you take Penny at her benign best. This has been the ultimate case of gaslighting for years. Now, I've been working for a number of years, as some of you may know, with Declassified Australia, and my colleagues have done some, and other journalists, not just us, some remarkable work to uncover. And we had a story 2 weeks ago which found in the last month, in July 2025, Australia has been sending parts to Israel for this plane. In the last month, none of that has stopped. Now, on the one hand, this has nothing to do with Mary's case at all. On the one hand, it's a quite different question. She's fighting for her legitimate right to free speech in a supposed democracy. But actually, they're incredibly connected, because the political and media space that exists in the mainstream, and I would argue the political mainstream too, for these conversations, in fact, in some ways, is shrinking, not expanding. In the independent space, it's huge and growing. And that is the frustration that many in the lobby feel. And that's why I would argue they're going after people like Mary, because they know that they have lost the battle of hearts and minds. How do I know that? Because they say it in their own events. They say it. They know that they have lost the battle for hearts and minds. So therefore, what does one try to do? You put up, as our government shamefully accepted, Gillian Siegel, our so-called anti-Semitism commissioner, to put forward ideas, and the government would have known, by the way, when they appointed her, what those likely recommendations would be, because she was a key member of the Israel lobby for years. You don't appoint someone like that and be shocked by the suggestions. Now, the government hasn't announced what they're going to do yet, but you can be rest assured they will take some of her things on board and probably reject others. This is only done, and it's happening in the US too, under Trump, and the UK, and parts of Europe, that unless you as an individual have the right to legitimate free speech, to question government policy, Israeli policy, and also, let's not forget one issue, Mary, as far as I know, is not an Israeli citizen. I'm not an Israeli citizen. We're honestly being told that an Australian citizen cannot comment on an issue on the other side of the world that may potentially offend, maybe, someone in the Israel lobby. Maybe. And this is not about offence. We are told that they are deeply hurt and offended by 2 tweets by Mary Kostakidis. Really? This is not what this case has ever been about. I support Mary, and as I did Antoinette Lattouf, different cases, but remarkably similar actually in some ways, because we as Australian citizens have the right to be critical of our own government, a foreign government, an individual, the leader of a militant organisation. We have the right to do that. And as a journalist, and frankly also as a Jew, I am so deeply offended by the fact that fellow Jews are telling the wider community we are so fragile and hurt that we should be allowed to have free speech on the question of Palestine in Australia. I'm going to finish on this point. We have been told now for 2 years, a gaslighting campaign of unique proportions that somehow says to us that vast numbers of people in the Jewish community, of which I am one, are so fragile and hurt that they cannot handle serious criticism of Israel. To which I would say, you cannot have it both ways. You can on the one hand say, as the Israel lobby does, Israel is the most powerful nation in the Middle East. On the other hand, being told that we are so offended by a tweet by Mary Kostakidis. You can't have it both ways. And you also can't be surprised that that kind of behaviour that we are seeing against Antony Loewenstein and Mary and others is actually, in my view, leading to real anti-Semitism. Because we are essentially being told that, as the Israel lobby does, inverted commas, the Jewish community is upset. To which I would say, there is no Jewish community. There are Jewish people and Israel lobbyists who have a position and a perspective and see their role as almost monitoring what should be acceptable speech. And I would say many others. I'm a member of the Jewish Council of Australia, an organisation, and there are others, we're not the only one, that says this is not what Jewish values means. Silencing legitimate criticism is not what a democracy means. And the effect of that publicly is that many people, including many who I meet, who are not traditional anti-Semites, who are not Nazis with a desire to kill Jews at all, who say to me daily, I get messages about this, people I don't know, this is leading us to not like Jewish people. Now, as someone who's Jewish, although not religious, I find that deeply disturbing. And what does that say to us? That says that the impact of Israeli actions, seeing on our phones every day the mass slaughter of people, seeing a pro-Israel lobby here in Australia trying to silence Antoinette, who failed, by the way, not Antoinette, the ABC, in silencing her. I see clip of that. She paid a high price for that. I'm not minimising any of that, as Mary does too on a personal level. I'm not denying any of that. But frankly, the ABC lost, and they deserve to lose badly. And I'm very much hoping that the Israel lobby loses against Mary. And they will.
Yeah.
I will leave you with this thought. There is something... How do I put this? Feedback. If there's any silver lining to what we have all seen in the last 2 years, and there are not many, because of what we are seeing day after day after day, but if there is a silver lining, there is the fact that the question of what we as a civilised society will accept and not has never been clearer. And believe me when I say the Israel lobby knows that, the politicians know it, much of the media know it, and it scares them, as it should. Thank you.